This is the Energy Makers Show, featuring the innovators, financiers, and policymakers focused on the global energy demand. Brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And here's your host, Paul Dickerson.
Hi, I'm Paul Dickerson, and welcome to another episode of the Energy Makers Show. First up today, Brent Greenfield, Executive Director of the National Ocean Policy Coalition, with an inside look at how energy companies tackle the complexities of ocean policy. Next up, Greg Price of Sikich, a company offering technology solutions to the ever-expanding oilfield services space. All that right after this.
At BKD, we understand the constantly shifting nature of the energy industry. As a national CPA and advisory firm, we serve energy clients from the beginning to the end of the cycle. Our experienced energy advisors serve approximately 300 energy companies in exploration, midstream, downstream, oilfield services, and power production. Plus, we're the largest North American member of the Complexities Global Alliance, which means we can help you wherever you operate. Contact a BKD advisor or visit us online to learn more.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome back to the Energy Makers Show. My guest now, Brent Greenfield, Executive Director of the National Ocean Policy Coalition. Brent, great to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
So the National Ocean Policy Coalition, what is it?
Yes, the National Ocean Policy Coalition was formed 3 years ago, and it's comprised of roughly 40 member organizations and associations representing commercial and recreational interests from virtually every sector of the economy, from energy and shipping to ports, manufacturing, even agricultural home builders. And so we were formed to provide a voice for those interests as this policy was being developed, as well as to ensure that it doesn't result in a new layer of regulatory policy that restricts or prohibits access for those commercial and recreational activities.
Well, and for our viewers who don't know what this National Ocean Policy is,
Sure.
What is it?
The National Ocean Policy is really the product of a multi-year effort by those who have a mindset that the oceans are the scene of an ever-growing list of conflicts of various human activities and uses, that those activities and uses are in conflict among themselves as well as with the concept of a healthy environment. And that if we don't take action now, that there will be irreversible damage to the ocean. And so as a result, we saw an executive order signed in 2010 establishing the National Ocean Policy, and to further that, national priority objectives, 9 of them, one of which that has received the most attention is coastal and marine spatial planning. This is something that the Interior Department has likened to a national zoning plan. It's attracted a lot of concern, but to implement this policy, the executive order also implements a new governing structure. The National Ocean Council is a 54-member entity comprised of federal officials that's housed at the White House. It's chaired by the Council on Environmental Quality, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and they're charged with overseeing the policy and certifying the coastal and marine spatial plans that are to be developed by 9 regional planning bodies located throughout the country. And ultimately, federal agencies are charged with implementing those plans.
Well, I was excited to have you on today because I think for a lot of folks outside the Beltway, outside of D.C., understanding sort of a law is enacted and then it affects industry in some way and how they respond to that, I think is something that a lot of people don't quite comprehend. So in July 2010, President Obama signed this policy.
Yes. And
we're still working through it. And you have a bunch of member companies trying to still conduct their business within that policy.
Absolutely. Companies, as I mentioned, that really represent the gamut of the U.S. economy. And the concerns, again, in a nutshell, go to access. Unfortunately, specifically with regard to energy, one of the first actions that we saw following this policy's enactment was a decision not to allow any new energy development activity for conventional energy outside of areas that were not already open. And that decision was made to restrict such access through at least 2017.
Now, and was this in response to the oil spill?
It happened to occur after. This was in December of 2010.
Right.
But this announcement specifically cited the National Ocean Policy Executive Order in part as justification. And so it confirmed a lot of the fears that were out there and continue to be that, in addition to coordinating and streamlining, this policy has the real potential to result in restricted access. And that's something that certainly has heightened those concerns.
Well, how has it played out for energy? You know, we hear that, you know, a lot of the offshore rigs have all moved to Africa, and you know, that a lot of the federal policies restricting access have affected business. Is that in fact happening?
I think we're still in the early stages of seeing how the impacts will play out specifically for the energy industry as well as others with regard to this particular policy. We're still in the fairly early stages of implementation,
Right.
But some of the early signs do indicate, concerns. And I think at minimum what we're likely to see is a new process and a new body that energy companies will have to add to their regulatory checklist. And at worst, it could end up being something that does restrict or prohibit access in new areas and potentially throw up new obstacles or hurdles in existing areas.
All right, so what about those who think that regulatory checklist is already too long?
We agree, and we are all about making things more efficient and ensuring that things don't become more complicated, and so that's what we're working to do.
Well, and all right, so how many member companies do you have as part of this coalition?
We have roughly 40 member companies and associations
All right,
that are
and
members of our coalition.
And do you meet periodically? Are you focused on federal or state?
We do meet periodically, and we're focused on nationally with the National Ocean Council activities, as well as regionally. We've seen 3 regions so far move forward with establishing regional planning bodies. Those are located in the Northeast U.S., the Mid-Atlantic U.S., and in the Pacific Islands. And so we're certainly following those closely, and we'll be watching other regions as they begin to establish regional planning bodies and move forward with implementation as well.
Well, oftentimes, I think a lot of companies have frustration with what's happening in Washington, and they may write their congressman or try and take some individual action. Why should someone join a coalition instead of just taking it on their own?
Sure, absolutely. And I think, both are important, but the opportunity to join a coalition that is comprised of many interests. It is energy, but it's also all these others that are united and speak with a collective voice, is something that we can offer, and that a coalition such as ours can offer that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. And being able to do that in a policy where there is no formal mechanism for stakeholders to have a direct seat at the table
Right.
is really all the more important. And unfortunately, that's been the case so far with this policy, is that these regional planning bodies are comprised solely of government officials. There really hasn't been an opportunity outside of public comment periods for formal input and advice to be given on this policy. And so we have helped to sort of be that voice and represent those interests in doing so.
Well, and within that membership, you've got some big names.
We do, and you can see our full list on the website at www.oceanpolicy.com. But there are lots of large associations as well as companies. Some of our members include organizations like API in terms of associations, the International Association of Geophysical Contractors, as well as individual companies among the large integrated majors as well.
Any majors that we'd know about?
Exxon and Chevron are members, for example, as well.
All right, so if I'm a company watching this, what should catalyze my interest?
I think the fact that we have a policy that is attracting a significant amount of federal resources across agencies and across the federal government. Agencies as varied as the Interior Department and the Energy Department, all the way down to NASA and HHS are involved with this policy. And so it's something that really needs to be paid attention to. And the fact that it's being done pursuant to an executive order means that we have not had the scrutiny and really the oversight that would typically accompany something that was being pursued of this magnitude pursuant to a law. And so it really is, it's going to mean that there's going to be more uncertainties as to what this means in the long run, and that it's going to require a lot of attention be paid to how it proceeds.
Well, Brent, keep up the good work. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
And that wraps our discussion with Brent Greenfield. We'll be back with more right after this.
I'm Russ Capper, and welcome to the Drilling Bits, brought to you by Sikich. With me, Greg Price, the author of the Drilling Bits. Greg, in our premiere episode, we talked about the focus on IT. Elaborate a bit.
Well, Russ, thank you. We do have a focus on IT, and this is the reason why Sikich invested in us here in this local economy. We have built out a solution set for the oilfield service companies that includes a variety of core systems, what we call ISV products or add-on products, plus our own intellectual property. And this is a combination of best-of-breed products and services that help oilfield services companies deliver their product in the field. It's been gathered over 13 years of working in this sector, so we have a lot of experience from our team and working with clients in this particular community.
Okay, if somebody's watching right now and wants to get in touch with you and learn more, how do they do that?
Well, they can reach me through sikich.com/blog in Energy Oilfield Services, or they can reach out to me at my email address at gprice@sikich.com.
And that's SIKICH?
SIKICH, that's right. Sick
right.
with an itch, as they say.
All right, fantastic. All right, and that wraps up this edition of the Drilling Bits, brought to you by Sikich.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome back to the Energy Makers Show. Our guest now, Greg Price, a partner at Sikich. Greg, great to have you on the program.
Paul, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So for our viewers who don't know Sikich, what's the firm?
Well, Sikich is a regional firm in Chicago that's about $100 million, and it has a wide variety of services from the traditional CPA types of compliance businesses, but it also has some very unique things that it does. It has an investment banking arm, has a sourcing or headhunting type of group inside the firm. It has a public relations and marketing firm. And in addition, it has a technology group, which makes up about 40% of that $100 million in revenue. So that's a big piece of their operating unit, is doing work in the technology sector.
So your area is technology and the energy sector, right?
That's correct.
Well, and you've been doing this a long time in Texas.
That's right.
What was it that attracted them to you?
Well, as you know, Houston is the energy capital of the world, and everything starts right here in Houston in the energy business. The two firms, my former firm and Sikich, have worked together on a variety of projects in the past, and they've been impressed with the explosive growth in the energy-related businesses in Houston, and They saw that we had a vertical for them as they're moving more into what we would call lines of business or verticals. They had a ready-made vertical all set in the energy sector, which would allow them to come into Texas and invest in something that's already established.
Wow, it's a great entree, and I've enjoyed our discussions in the past because you've got a unique vantage point of the market. What, looking at some of the challenges being faced in this vibrant time for traditional energy, let's talk whether it's upstream, midstream, downstream. Tell me what you're seeing.
Well, there's a few things that we're seeing. One is that confidence is very high. And so that leads to investment and opportunities and more risk-taking in terms of participation in either drilling or servicing companies in the wide sections of both Texas and across the United States. You know, one of the things that I'm sitting here in amazement, and I'm sure you are as well, to be able to say that the United States could be totally energy independent.
It's incredible.
I never thought I would see that or hear that in my lifetime. And, you know, I went through all the Arab oil embargoes and saw the impact of that. Right. I was a young man in high school at the time. And for me to sit here today and see that just is a statement that is so profound, it almost is unbelievable when you say it.
Well, in specific to then, upstream, we're seeing a lot. Midstream, there is a lot of optimism. Is it going to last? Are there some challenges being faced by this rush to market?
Well, of course, I think there's always challenges in the energy business, and they do a pretty good job. Most of the people that I work with and the operators, et cetera, they understand the risk parameters. Right. And so there are always risks anytime you start drilling with, hydrocarbons. Sure. And so they take good preventive controls to prevent things from happening there. But I think the thing that I'm seeing more than anything else is that there's now, with the advances in technology from drilling, things that were maybe at one time looked at as not being viable are now viable. And now that creates opportunities for lots of other folks to get active in the sector, and you're seeing more investment. So the thing that I'm looking at is, and I'm not the person that has a long view on this, but I have spoken to people like yourself and others. They indicate that this is probably year 3 or 4 on a 30-year run. And so this is something that I think, from my rest of my working career, it's probably going to be like this for that period of time, creating those kinds of opportunities.
Well, it's an incredible moment in time, and as you know, it's important as your business is growing quickly to surround yourself with the right type of advisors. Why should a company use Sikich?
Well, Sikich is going to bring, I think, a unique perspective to the energy and oilfield services market because we're focused in vertical, right? So we have people that understand all aspects of your business, can answer the questions that you're asking because they have the experience and have been there. One of the things that we're seeing is with confidence becoming higher in the oilfield services sector, they're looking at some of their back office systems. They've made the investments in the technology side in the operating or in the field types of things. Now they're taking a look at the back office, things that they wanted to do. Yes. One of the things that we see almost on every prospective customer is that they do not have a very good handle on their costs. They know where they're making money in terms of revenues because that's traceable by invoicing and billing, but they do not have a good handle on what it costs for them to actually drill the well or support well activities.
So what advice are you giving these operators?
Well, I think there's a couple of things we try to talk to them about. That number one, that it is possible to have a good back office solution today without having to spend an arm and a leg. During the what I would call the late 80s and throughout the 90s, there was a huge ramp up in ERP, primarily for the major independents. And
ERP?
That's the enterprise resource planning or accounting systems.
Right.
And so there was a major investment in those areas in the 80s and 90s, but those were what I would call big iron, big data related activities. A lot of the companies today could be, for example, one of our customers was $25 million when we started talking to them. They were $100 million when we finished the implementation. 6 months later, they're on their way to $300 million.
Incredible
within
growth.
2 years. Incredible growth, and they can't keep hiring people to track invoices or costs or things like that. So there is a way to leverage technology cost effectively today to help support you run your business.
Well, and that's your specific area of expertise, right?
That's correct. The back office for these oilfield service companies working with their accounting systems and their ERP solutions. That's our specialty.
So not only are you helping with the accounting, but truly wrapping your arms around the client more as a consultant, helping them really figure out the best way to operate.
That's correct. We do a number of what I would call standoff projects where they are, contained within a segment of business. But we also do a number of managed service businesses. For example, one of the things I didn't mention earlier is that we also do hosting at Sikich. So a lot of companies today don't want to deal with the infrastructure related matters. They want to focus really on their business, which is core, which is a good decision for them.
Right.
We also offer a all-in-one solution from the hosted part of the business through the technology and then, back office support from industry related experts. And so today, now there's an opportunity to get access to those things that can support your business from one perspective.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the program. An incredible resource.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me here.
And that wraps our discussion with Greg Price and also concludes this episode of The Energy Makers Show, heard on the radio nationwide and seen right here at TheEnergyMakers.com. I'm Paul Dickerson, and we'll see you next week.